Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to this Licensing and Public Protection Committee meeting on the, what day is it? Thank you, 12th of December at 7 p.m. Thank you all for coming. It'll be recorded, so welcome also to those who are either watching the recording live or who are going to watch it later. If we go to the first item on the agenda, which is apologies. I've received apologies from Councillors Andy Parker, Councillor Barker, Councillor Heeson. Are there any more apologies? Councillor Allport. Any others? Okay, and we have substitutes for some of the missing members. We have Councillor David Hutchison and also Councillor John Tagg. We go to item 2 on the agenda, which is declarations of interest in relation to licensing matters. Are there any declarations of interest? Item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting, which you will find on pages 5 to 10 of the report list. Has anyone got any queries about those minutes or anything they'd like to raise? Someone proposed that they be accepted. Thank you. Seconded. Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. Moving to item 4 on the agenda, the minutes of the licensing subcommittee we've done. Minutes of the previous meeting we've done. If we look at the minutes of the licensing subcommittee now, that's pages 11 to 12. I'd ask the same question. Are there any issues there to raise or any changes that someone's noticed that need to be made? No proposed. Ian, thank you. Councillor Wilkes, Councillor. Move to item 5 on the agenda, which is the Public Protection Committee. Again, we have to ask for any declarations of interest in relation to public protection matters specifically. No. Move to item 6, private hire and Hackney carriage fees and charges. This is a report that you'll find on pages 13 to 18, and I would ask our officer Matt Burton to give us a summary of the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. Yes, this first item for us to go through is private hire and Hackney carriage fees and charges for 2024 and 25. Members will remember at the last committee we brought a proposal with a recommendation that it goes out to consultation, public consultation for the fees that we were proposing. We carried out that consultation between October and November of 2023. It was sent to all licence holders, trade representatives, vehicle hire companies and trade associations. We received no responses at all. So at 2.5, you'll see in the table, they are the proposed fees. They remain unchanged from when we came to you in October. So the recommendation from officers today is that these are the fees and charges that are accepted and charged from the 1st of April 2024 through to the 31st of March 2025. Happy to take any questions.
If somebody will second me, I'm quite happy just to move it. As we have no responses, it seems fairly poorly discussed.
Yes, thank you again, Chair. As stated, this is a report in relation to a part of the taxi licensing policy, which officers are recommending is amended. The recommendation will be for members to determine whether any amendments to the policy should be carried out at this time or at the next time we review the policy as a whole. The Council have historically had provisions within the policies prohibiting rear passenger windows of the licensed vehicles being heavily tinted and ensuring that a certain amount of light is transmitted through the windows. You'll all be aware that our current taxi licensing policy was introduced in 2019, and prior to that we had one that was 2015 to 2018. Ever since then, we've had a requirement that all rear windows have allow for a minimum of 35% light transmission through those. There is a part of our council policy that allows the committee to amend the policy where there is no foreseeable detrimental effect to the licensee's interest without the need for a consultation. And we believe that the recommendation we're putting forward would not have any detrimental effect on our licence holders. On 17th November 2023, the Department for Transport issued their latest revision of the best practice guidance, which was last done in 2010, and contain a section on tinted windows, which is outlined in the report. But just a bit of background before that. Each year, the Department for Transport conducts a national survey of all licensing authorities, which covers a whole host of things about taxi licensing, including numbers of licenses held and certain policy matters. One of those is relates to which authorities or how many have conditions that relate to tinted windows in vehicles. It was only recently that was introduced, but it does show from the years that we've had that there are more local authorities now removing a condition or not, or being silent on whether or not tinted windows are permitted than previously. Excuse me. There are also many other local authorities that are regularly working within the borough. Our neighbours Stoke-on-Trent and Wolverhampton, that you know have licences that are operated here locally. Their policy is silent on window tinting, and in effect all their vehicles are permitted to have tinted or privacy windows without a restriction. The reasoning behind the council's current policy and previously in not allowing that has always been on the basis of public safety and for the ability for passengers to see out of and others to see into the licensed vehicles. In the recent best practice guidance from the Department of Transport, what they've said is included at 2.3 of the report. I don't propose to read all the way through it, but what they have suggested is that during their consultation, they found no evidence that public safety was compromised by vehicles having tinted windows or privacy glass in them. What they have said is that there is sometimes a customer preference, but there's not a public safety issue. They have suggested that if authorities were going to put an amount in, a criteria, then it should be around 30%, which is very similar to what we have currently. And then it just goes on to say that authorities should be careful to consider the views of the public and the trade when considering whether aftermarket tinting is acceptable. So that's when people attach film to windows to make them darker than the manufacturer fitted ones. We've also spoken to Council Transport Manager. He's of the view that it's not detrimental to public safety to remove the tinted windows condition, and also it would benefit the trade because we have turned away vehicles that are otherwise suitable for those windows. And equally, when we've held trade meetings recently in October and November with the Hackney Carriage trade and the private hire trade, both sides have identified this as an issue when their members are trying to purchase vehicles that meet our age requirements. It's quite difficult for them to find a vehicle at the right age and the right type that don't have factory fitted tinted windows. So due to all of that, officers have determined that we need to review the condition relating to the vehicles. Our recommendation is that the current condition as it is removed. We replace it with a condition that allows all vehicles to have tinted and privacy glass in the rear passenger windows, as long as it is to the original manufacturer's specification and is fitted at the time of the vehicle being manufactured, which is commonly known as factory fitted windows, and not to allow any aftermarket or additional tinting to be permissible. There are some other options available, which are section 5 of your report. The other options are to retain our current condition and review the tinted window issue when we have the full policy review next year. The second option is to align with the view of the Department for Transport guidance. So that's amend our current condition from 35% to 30%. And then there is also an additional option of removing our current condition and also allowing people to have aftermarket tinting included. But again, our recommendation is to remove the condition, but not allow for any aftermarket tinting and only allow factory fitted windows. Again, if there are any questions, Chair, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask the officer, to his knowledge, have there ever been any safeguarding or safety issues in relation to tinted windows? And second part of the question, what would be the reason that somebody would make their windows more tinted than the factory fitted? If you could answer those, I'd be grateful.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. As far as we are aware, within Newcastle and wider, we're not aware of any safety implications from having tinted windows either here, as I say, or nationally or wider. In terms of why people may want to add tint, I think there's probably a couple of answers. One is that they might like the design, the style of having a vehicle of that nature, but the vehicle that they currently own doesn't have those sorts of windows. The other possibility is that there may be a wish to do that for a reason against public safety, but I'd go back to the Department for Transport guidance that says from all the consultations they've not had any evidence provided to them that is the case. It's not something we've ever had because we've always had this condition. So if people were to do that, then we would have to make them remove their windows or take the vehicle off the fleet. So yes, not something we've really encountered previously.
Councillor Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I'd agree entirely with 5.1c. I think the question that we have always asked is, if you want to have tinted windows at the back, why do you want them? Whereas now, you buy a new or newish car. Mine's got tinted windows. I've asked for it. They come like my son's got tinted windows. My wife's got tinted windows. That's how they come now, cars. So I think we're in a different age now from when these rules were brought in. And I totally agree that if they want to fit them afterwards, they shouldn't be allowed to. I agree entirely with that. But I think the idea of having a car with tinted windows, because cars have got tinted windows now, it's just what they are. And I think if we don't do it, I think we're just putting more obstacles in the way of taxi drivers personally. And I would support 5.1 and C and the two items at the bottom of it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Williams.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Could the officer really go into more detail? What is a tinted window? You mentioned, am I right, in 30%? Is that the vehicle manufacturers do to 30%? Because you see on the television and whatever, cars with really blackout, So before we make a decision, I'd like to really, but we haven't got a sample here, to say that what's tinted and what's a blackout. So really, can you elaborate on that, Matt? On that point, how dark is a tinted window? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. When we use the phrase tinted or privacy, it just means windows that are darker than what is legally permissible for the front windows. So in law, there is a specific level of light that needs to be able to be transmitted through the front windscreen and the front driver and front passenger windows. There's no legal requirement for any window behind that, what's called the B pillar, to be able to see through it at all. So when we're saying tinted windows and privacy windows, it can be anything at all beyond what the front windows would legally have to be. So it could be that it's completely blacked out, or it could be that it's just a little bit darker than what the front windows come as. Anecdotally, we over the past several months have failed, I'd say 4 or 5 vehicles, and all of those, their window transmission is somewhere between 17 and 23, 24. So none of the ones that we've had presented to us are completely blacked out, but they are darker than the front windows. But in the transport manager's view, you can still see in and out of those. That's not necessarily what we're say. Obviously, we're interested in that as a criteria, but our proposal is that if it comes manufactured, fitted, and it's not been effectively changed afterwards, that would be permissible.
Could I just ask Matt? In my head, it's anything up to 30% factory fitted, tinted oblique windows. We're requiring our taxi drivers to have a car that is no longer than 7 years old. All the new cars that are becoming available that they're purchasing are going to have, as Councillor Sweeney said, in this modern time, are going to have, or at least a majority of them will have tinted windows. We're almost at odds with what the manufacturer's benchmark is for tinted windows by turning away cars that have, I think you said 17 to 24% or something like that. And that seems a tad either unfair or unjust. I'd like your comments on it from a manufacturer's point of view and from it being at odds with our policy.
It is at odds in some respects. There are some vehicles that don't, I'll phrase it a different way. There are some vehicles that are new or newer that do meet the current policy criteria. However, the majority of the vehicles that are within the last 4, 5, 6 years do not. So it is becoming increasingly difficult for members of the trade, if they want to buy new vehicles and stay licensed with ourselves and meet our policy criteria, it's becoming increasingly difficult for them to find vehicles that are suitable. So that is one point. In relation to the light transmitted, I've just pulled up the government rules just for clarity. For vehicles, the front windscreen must let in at least 75% of light, and the front and side windows must let in at least 70% of light. So that is quite a lot, but it's quite clear in that there is no rule for anything behind that B pillar there. So what we're doing is at odds with the vehicles that are being made by the manufacturers and is at odds with what government allow vehicles to be made with, which is what the manufacturers will base their criteria and specifications on.
My only comment in addition to that would be it seems a little unfair and slightly onerous to put that burden on taxi drivers who are trying to buy a car that will, fulfill what we want. Coupled with that, I think, as Councillor Sweeney said, 5.1 little c, little Roman 1 is the ideal situation where we accept the standard manufacturer's prescription, but don't allow darkened windows fitted post-purchase.
That's our proposal. That's what happens. Option CI is the recommendation, and the reason, one of the reasons, I've outlined a couple, or several within the report. One of the reasons that we would like to see that go through is that the trade are struggling to find vehicles that meet the criteria, and we have turned away vehicles that are otherwise suitable, but we've deemed not because of that criteria point in the policy. So yes, that is one of the points we would put forward as a strong indicator as to why we should move towards what the recommendation is.
Yes.
Can I just, I misread this, Chairman. I misread number 2. I meant C1, like you said.
Excuse me, I've had my light on for the past
Oh.
4 people. It's quite all right. Thank you. I would. This is a long thorn. This is a long thorn in. I do not. We've got no. In the next public protection subcommittee, we're going to have somebody who's coming in for blacked out windows because he's got the chauffeur driven cars. I can agree with that. That's with private customers. But he's coming in now to have a blacked out windows, to use his taxi for blacked out windows to be an ordinary taxi driver. Our taxi drivers carry vulnerable children around. We've all been on here long enough to know we've had cases where things have happened in backs of cars. We've got people who carry drugs around in taxis, as we all know of. If you've got blacked out windows, we have no whatever at all. And I will never agree to a blacked out window on a taxi. Tinted glass is different again. You can see in the backs, we've all got cars with tint, probably most of us have with tinted windows. But there's no way we should have blacked out windows to carry on a taxi because we do carry vulnerable people. Not just children, we carry very vulnerable people. And we've got more schools and whatever now using taxi drivers, as we all know of. And we've had cases where children have been, as we know, in front of this committee itself. So I'm sorry, I will not be voting for all blacked out windows for any case at all.
Could I ask Matt Burton, as our officer, for the avoidance of doubt, we're not suggesting accepting blacked out windows at all?
We are, the recommendation would allow for that, yes.
It would?
It would.
As in completely blacked out?
Yes, yes it would, as long as it was manufacturer fitted. They wouldn't be allowed to buy a vehicle with whatever windows and then change them to something darker, or add additional tint or film onto it to make it darker. But as it stands, if the vehicle was manufacturer fitted with the completely darkened, blackened out windows, the condition or the recommendation as it is would allow for that, yes.
So for the avoidance of doubt, most manufacturers do 30% tinted windows, but if they pre-ordered something specifically with blacked out windows, you're saying we would have to accept that?
I'm not saying that that's what the manufacturers have. No, the manufacturers differ wildly in terms of the level of tinted windows that they have. There are some that have completely blacked out windows, but they tend to be the more executive type vehicles. It doesn't tend to be the vehicles that we see commonly on the road, and our most licensed vehicles are Toyota Avensis, Skoda Octavia, Volkswagen Passat. They're all the same type of car. They do have tinted windows, but not to the level of the blacking out that's being spoken of now. But the condition or recommendation as it is, if a vehicle did have completely blacked out windows as factory fitted, that would be allowed.
Councillor Hutchison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On reading the report, section 2.4, to me it says that the private hire and the Hackney Carriage drivers are finding it difficult to source vehicles that comply with the Borough Council guidelines. Therefore, they're going elsewhere and registering in another authority. Therefore, we're losing the income stream, but they're actually working in our area, which is not a good thing. Section 2.5, we are starting to see a lot more of the electric hybrid cars coming along into the fleet. They normally have tinted windows, and it does cost money to change them to something lighter that would then comply with the Borough Council guidelines. All the cabinet members today had to go on an on-the-job day and I was selected to go down the depot and do some taxi testing and taxi MOTs. So in chatting to the guys that I worked with today, they told me that they did have some borough council taxi drivers that live in the borough, are registered in the borough, and they've gone through the process of having their windows changed just so that they can comply with the borough council guidelines. And the fittings were so shoddy that they failed the MOT. So the guys were trying to go with our guidelines, but obviously it shot them in the foot because they didn't pass the MOT. So that's not very good. So if someone lives in the area, works in the area, wants to register with the Borough Council, I don't really think we should put any obstacles in their way personally. So like Councillor Sweeney, I'd go with section C and then 1, as long as they're factory fitted at the time the car's been manufactured. I would go with that recommendation. Thank you.
Could I come back? Thanks for letting me come back, Madam Chair. I agree with the tinted windows, and we've had the reports, and other members agree with it. But in my view, it's leaving an hole in the sense where somebody could buy a car with blacked out windows, passenger blacked out windows. And where are we agreeing to that? They could buy a second-hand car with those blacked out windows, passenger windows. And I think that's totally wrong. I think, yeah, if they're buying cars with, as you said, about the tint, the percentage of tint as manufacturers are making, I'd agree 100%. But not, if we agree to this, see, and I'm right in saying, if I'm wrong, please tell me, that we are leaving an hole in the safety of the passengers, that somebody could buy a blacked out passenger windows that are blacked out. Am I right in saying that? Yeah.
Any other comments? Councillor Sweeney.
But it must be X% or something. So it has to have the, well, percentage might sound like, but seems a reasonable compromise. We all agree that pass us into windows, yeah. But we just want that out, so there must be a percentage. You say if it's over X%, but if it's less than that, I don't know what something wrong with it.
But for my part, I agree with both Councillor Williams and Councillor Sweeney. If we could limit it to 30%, which is the manufacturer's norm, and not have the blacked out. I follow the guidelines that we do with taxi drivers, in that, would you like your wife, child, would they feel safe? Would you feel happy for them to feel safe getting into a taxi? And I have to say, my hand on my heart, I would not feel happy with them getting in a completely blacked out rear of a car. Any car, let alone a taxi. Who knows your address? Matt.
Yes, thank you, Chair. That is something I couldn't give you a figure that we need to go off.
Can I just interrupt and ask that Councillor Williams turns his mic off, then we can hear Matt. Thank you.
Better?
Yes.
Perfect. Start again then. It's something we could certainly look at in terms of a compromise. I wouldn't like to offer a percentage now, because we'd need to look at the specifications that various manufacturers have. If that was something that members were minded for us to do, we would probably need to come back to you again with a recommendation, with an amendment that has a percentage of some sort in, that would hopefully remove the concern of totally blacked out windows. But again, I couldn't give a percentage right now.
Thank you. I think we'd all be happier with that. Yes. I think one of the only alternative is, if you're not going to put that amendment in, is you start going down a very prescriptive route of saying these are the cars that you can choose from to purchase your taxi, and that seems a little too invasive for me. So I think if Matt could go back to the manufacturers and look at their norms, that would be helpful. Is everyone in favour of that?
We don't end up with locked passenger windows.
Right. Yes.
I agree with Williams.
Yes. Any other comments or questions? Okay. The next item on the agenda is item 8, the Environment Act 1995. Could I ask our officer, Darren Walters, to do a summary report of this report, please? You'll find the report on pages 25 to 30 of your pack.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. The annual status report for 2023, this is what this report concerns. This report follows a template approach prescribed by DEFRA to report on the status of air quality within the borough. We've produced statutory templates now for some 20 plus years and supplied those to DEFRA. So this brings about a report for the 2022 calendar year. So it's a retrospective review of air quality. And it looks at the principal pollution, nitrogen dioxide, that being mainly related to combustion, and the main impacts from that related to traffic within the borough. As you've heard before at committee, we have 4 air quality management areas at this moment in time. Last committee resolved to approve the revocation of the Little Madeley air quality management areas. So in effect, we've got 3 active air quality management areas. And I'm pleased to say that across those air quality management areas that we are compliant with the UK objectives for nitrogen dioxide in all respects. We've not identified any exceedances outside of those areas, and in relation to one of those areas, DEFRA have advised that we should look to revoke the air quality management area, that being for Woolstanton, Port Hill and Maybank. So we will report on that at the next stage of the annual status report due next year, which will take into account results from this year. We've also then looked at particulate matter, and that's of particular interest given its health impacts on human health and long-term health impacts. And we've then provided an update in that report on the action that the Borough Council officers are taking to reduce emissions of particulate matter, and particularly fine particulate matter, PM 2.5, which is very fine particles that are of current health concern. So that brings up to date a review of the air quality within the borough. Turning to the air quality management areas that we've got in place at the moment. Little Madeley, as we said, has been revoked, or is due to be revoked. The Newcastle Town Centre air quality management area, we are compliant, although we do have a location at Sandy Lane, which is within 10% of the limits. So we are proposing to keep that quality management area in operation. And obviously we've got the town centre plans to also consider. So I've been in contact with colleagues over time to discuss the aspirations for the town centre to make sure that any borough council-led projects don't inadvertently tip us over the limit. And I'm pleased to say that that's been taken on board. In relation to Kidsgrove, again, we've got Borough Council projects happening in Kidsgrove. The area of concern has always been around the junction of the avenue and Liverpool Road in Kidsgrove. It's very congested at peak times. Although that's currently compliant, we are still within that 10% margin of concern, so we do need to keep that in place. And we're also exploring with colleagues how any borough council-led projects might benefit that area in reducing impacts of air quality. So looking at how we can influence traffic movements to the better to reduce congestion, and also at the same time reduce emissions of nitrogen dioxide. And then in the Woolstanton, Maybank and Port Hill air quality management area, we are well below the annual mean objective for nitrogen dioxide, but we will take into account another year's worth of monitoring data, given that we are so close to the year end, and then report that to committee in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm no scientist, but I'm just wondering if you could answer me this question. You talked about air quality, and we mainly are talking about the effects of traffic and pollution. But do we know, in relation to the quarry, how that affects overall air quality?
For the purpose of this report, we have looked in previous years at emissions from the landfill, basically prescribed pollutants, which would be particulate matter, sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide in the main. Previous reports have considered that the quarry isn't a cause of significant emissions from those pollutants. However, that's not to say that other pollutants aren't of concern. I can't say whether those are of current concern at this moment in time because we don't directly assess those. Obviously, I'm aware of the community's concern about the validity of the monitoring data and how that has been explored by the Environment Agency. And I think that's probably most appropriate for the Environment Agency to comment on, together with public health experts who can then quantify and scientifically understand that data and then present an argument to the community and councillors as to what those results actually mean in reality. I can say that Borough Council officers are routinely going out to assess emissions of hydrogen sulfide. This has been the one that's mainly related to odour events and the abatement notice. And we are still actively gathering evidence and undertaking investigations, particularly when we can identify pollution events that are likely to lead to increased emissions or be conducive to pollutants staying around where people live or work. So we are, as officers, in regular contact with Environment Agency and public health officials, and the data that's coming from the Environment Agency monitoring stations, that will be a subject, I believe, of further reports to the general public in due course.
Thank you for that thorough answer. Could I ask one more question, Chair? How are we doing, Newcastle, in comparison to Staffordshire as a whole in terms of air quality?
Obviously, we do have an area of concern on Etruria Road. That's subject to a ministerial direction. I'm not going to go into that because that's not my project, and I wouldn't want to give you any wrong information on that. In relation to nitrogen dioxide in general, it tends to be the more urbanised councils within Staffordshire that are experiencing issues with that. So Lascelles, Stoke I think Burton-on-Trent and Staffordshire Moorlands, parts of Staffordshire Moorlands. In relation to the other work for fine particulate matter, as councils, we do coordinate action, and we've got some commonality of approach in what we're doing. Certainly, last committee you'll have heard about proposed consultation on the smoke control areas. So that type of work is contributing towards that, as well as nuisance work in relation to bonfires, commercial burning, and also regulation of industrial processes. So as officers, we do go out and about, speak to various sectors of the community, offer advice and guidance, and take enforcement action where necessary. We also take account of air quality at the planning stage. So as I mentioned earlier, with regard to the Borough Council's aspirations for the town centre, that is a significant issue that we're pleased to see has been addressed. And also for similar sort of development applications, say for housing development out across the borough or industrial applications, again, they are assessed for air quality impacts. And wherever possible, we try to ensure that we're not breaching air quality objectives. And I'm pleased to say in the majority of cases that's been the case. Otherwise, we would have picked up on issues before now, and we would have been recommending possibly applications for refusal based on air quality grounds. But overall, the air quality within the borough is improving, although we do have localised hotspots, principally due to traffic or due to certain problems or issues.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Councillor Sweeney.
Thank you, Chairman. Darren, the 2.3 in respect to the Maybank, Woolstanton, Portalake, DEFRA have advised the council should proceed to revoke this. Also in discussion with DEFRA, what have you said when you in your pre? We're going to keep it going for another year.
Yes.
So obviously the bus gate's going to impact on this, isn't it? So it seems unwise to cancel at the moment.
I don't know the detail about the work on the A53, so obviously I'm aware of a bus gate proposal, but at this stage we are in discussions with DEFRA about wanting to maintain that air quality managed area for very good reasons. So we'll update committee once we have a firm answer from DEFRA on that point.
Councillor Williams.
Thanks, Chair. On that point of Basford Bank, I mean, those people who live locally know that if you stop traffic going down Basford Bank, they will go to other areas. I know the city have done a test to see what impact it will have on, I think, Shelton New Road and roads where traffic has been forced to go because you can't go down Basford Bank. So you're spreading the problem round, aren't we? You know, and have we done an assessment, say on Grange Lane and Porthill Bank? They're the two obvious rat runs if you couldn't go down Basford Bank.
Okay. I believe an assessment has been done, but with it not being my project, that's something I'm not entirely up to speed on, so it'd be wrong for me to comment in any detail. I can ask that Nesta Barker is the project lead on that, and I believe potentially a report is due to come to council for consideration in the very near future, so that will update members on the situation of any modelling work that's been undertaken to inform the choices of to address the issues on Etruria Road. But to go any further than that would be wrong for me to do at this stage. Okay.
Could we do that? You said ask Nesta to give a report. Could we do that? Ask Nesta to
I'm
give a
sure we
report
could. Could we do that?
on the rat runs because
Alternatives.
if
I mean, I take point with what Councillor Williams says, and I do agree to some extent. We're rebuilding this town centre and spending a lot of money on it, and to make it more attractive to encourage people to come into the city centre. the last thing we should be doing is barring them off. You know, workmen with the white van who are earning their crust, being able to get into the town centre, shoppers being able to get in. We're just putting barriers up, in my mind, to stop that happening. And I think whatever you try and defer from one area, they will just go to another, and that will heighten that level of emissions. And I find that it's not a solution to the problem. It's just creating a different problem. That's not a question, that's an opinion.
Okay. Nesta does have scheduled reports going to various committees in the new year, so councillors will receive an update on the modelling work and the impacts on the locality of any proposals to influence traffic movements along the A53 to reduce and bring about compliance with the ministerial directives. So as to when that will be in the new year, I don't know myself, but I do know there's a series of meetings to various council committees planned.
Darren, I think any additional information that your project people or Nesta could give us would be helpful, because I don't think this is something we can think of in silos as to those are the emissions, this is the town centre rebuild, I think it has to knit together, and we have to look at the impact on everything. I don't know whether the other councillors agree with me.
Certainly, as I understand it, one of those meetings will be for full council, so for all members of the borough council and affected wards. So quite when that will be in the new year, I don't fully know, but that is something that is planned. Okay.
Councillor Adcock.
Thank you, and thank you for this report. It's really encouraging to see that air quality is improving. I think perhaps because we've seen in the last few years definitely a switch away from diesel and those more polluting older diesel vehicles with the NO2 emissions. That's really encouraging, and I'm sure will continue. Public trust has been a bit damaged, of course, with the revelations around Wally's Quarry and the miscalibration of the hydrogen sulfide by the Environment Agency monitoring stations. Could you just tell us a little bit about how the NO2 is measured and reassure us that that is all calibrated correctly according to the manufacturer recommendations?
So for the purposes of the work that we undertake as a borough council, we have diffusion tubes positioned on a number of key buildings and lampposts across the borough, principally where we get congestion hotspots, or we've got buildings that are very close to the roadway, which cause poor dispersion of exhaust emissions in the main. So those diffusion tubes, it's a common monitoring technique that's employed by councils across the country, advocated by DEFRA, and we take those diffusion tubes each month, they get submitted to the lab, we get a result, and then we analyse the result across the year, and that's basically comparison against the UK annual mean. The station in Queen's Gardens, just in the green box outside, and also the Environment Agency stations, those will give real-time data as to what's happening with nitrogen dioxide, so we can see that in a bit more detail. I'm not aware of any issues having been raised with the any other monitoring stations that have been looked at for Wally's Quarry. That is a question obviously we can take away and ask and just seek confirmation that there are no issues there, or if there are issues, that those are being explored alongside the hydrogen sulfide concerns. But nothing that I'm aware of has come to light to raise any concerns about Wally's Quarry. As well as hydrogen sulfide, they do monitor for a wide range of pollutants, so nothing has been flagged or brought to my attention regarding that. I am also, at last committee, members will be aware that we've submitted a grant bid to DEFRA to hopefully, if we're successful, to install a number of monitors on lampposts across the borough, and this will give us this real-time understanding of what's happening, particularly around school runs, and then we're hoping to use that then to influence meaningful changes in how people get to school and move around, and show school children and parents the impacts of school journeys. So we'll know the outcome of that hopefully by March, and hopefully that will be a good story if we are successful.
I'm sure we'll look forward to that, Darren. Thank you very much. I think that the tentacles of Wally's Quarry reach far and wide, and I think Councillor Adcock's point of how much faith can we have in the monitoring mechanism is a valid one. So it would be useful to have some reassurance from that perspective as well, I think.
Certainly, I'll take that away and ask Nesta and officers involved to ask those specific questions and to feed back to members.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Item 9 on the agenda is the minutes of the Public Protection Subcommittee meeting, and it's pages 31 to 34. These minutes were submitted for approval since they were published post the last subcommittee. Everyone okay with those? Yes. No further disclosure of interest and urgent business. They're agenda items that are retained for future use, I believe. So at 7:52, declare the meeting closed. Thank you.